So, Jonathan, I remember 3 years ago or something, you knocked on my door in the office and said, Terry, I'm going to write this double concerto, clarinet and bassoon, and you were a little bit fearful of writing for bassoon.
Indeed, very much so. The bassoon really doesn't get that much light of day in the orchestra. I mean, it's always doubling with the cellos, and there are some good passages, but it never has like a whole movement to itself.
Right.
Or two movements.
Right.
Or three. And so I wanted to write something which was effective and use the instrument effectively and in its best way, but I needed some advice. And so indeed I came to you. I said, Terry, not the first time I've come to you for help. I knocked on your door and I said, how do I do this?
And I remember at that time I was going through some of my old files, and actually, pulling out some things from when I was at West Virginia University. I said, oh, I got just the sheet for you. And they had me lecture at an orchestration class. And so we just went through that lecture a little bit. These are the bassoon ranges, and this is some of the literature. And I know you looked at some of that.
I certainly did. After you showed me things in the bassoon, you handed me this sheet, and then maybe you illustrated.
Yeah.
Here is the actual sheet that Terry gave me, and it's right to the point. I mean, you obviously went through the ranges and this and that, but you broke down the ranges very, very specifically, and told me what the bassoon could do very exactly. And then even more so, you have a repertoire example. And I went and looked at these repertoire examples, the lyrical use of the instrument, where you have the Stravinsky from the Firebird Suite.
Yeah.
And I went and I studied that, and I said, wow, that is quite an amazing range of the instrument, and it works so well. It would work so well if I had this orchestral, that orchestral color. And so the beginning of the concerto,
Yes.
which starts with the bassoon,
Yes.
and strings in the orchestral version, that comes right from your suggestion.
Oh, wonderful.
Right from Stravinsky,
Yeah.
a big inspiration. And here it says right here, comic use of the instrument.
Yes.
So
that's the second movement then, yeah.
So right there, that's your fault. Because
Love that movement.
But the thing is, because I always knew that the bassoon could have a comical element, but it was kind of like, do I really want to tell? And then when a bassoonist comes and says that the bassoon could be comical, I'm like, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Forget it. I'm going to have fun. Particularly liked so much is the adjectives that you, the sound quality, the adjectives that you put to the range. The lower range is rich, full, tubby, and then the lyric sonorous tenor.
Yes.
And then you mentioned thinner sound for the top register, but what distinctly, what really moved me is in between the thinner sound and the sonorous, there really is such a sweet spot in the bassoon between like G and G, G and A,
Yes.
with tremendous carrying power, with tremendous lyricism, and enough power to really cut through the orchestra, but still feel that it's natural to the player, like you're not forcing that sound.
Right.
It just kind of comes out, and there it is.
Sort of like more the upper tenor range.
Yeah.
Yeah, similar to that, and the bassoon seems to have that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you get to this A,
Yeah.
in my opinion, it gets a little
Yeah,
intense.
yeah,
When I write concerti, I very much like to look at etude books.
Yeah.
Because the etude books typically show the limits of what the instrument could do,
Sure.
or what they have to work at, or what's typical. And when I looked at the Weissenborn, I saw, oh my gosh, the bassoon could really go and go and go and go and go. Because, when in the orchestra, when you're, looking at the orchestral bassoon, you see it's here,
yeah, yeah.
it stops, it doubles the cello, it stops. But I didn't see like this continual motion. I said, boy, it could do so much. So from those etudes and peeking at some of your digital professor of the bassoon and listening to that, I said, wow, I could really push the bassoon.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that in the third movement.
Yeah. And I know the other work you examined was the Otmar Nunzio, Variations on Theme by Pergolesi, and
Yes,
you
that
looked at
is
that.
a score that you showed me
Yeah.
at that meeting. And I looked at it and studied it. And I saw Nunzio do really extreme,
Yeah.
kind of wild and crazy and fun things. And I said, wow, the bassoon could be a lot of fun. He really explores a whole array of colors and textures. And the orchestral part, or the piano part, is really, it's very notey.
Yes.
And I loved how the interaction between all these notes and the bassoon came out. And you could see that happening in the third movement. That was a source of inspiration. Like had the orchestras and these big chords
Yes.
combining with the
Yes.
bassoon coming right through.
Were there any things that were surprising when you heard the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra actually play the piece? You said, wow, this surprised me in some way.
I realized that I could have been a little bit more front with the orchestra, meaning that the clarinet and the bassoon had more carrying power than I
okay.
thought. I was very delicate with a lot of the orchestration.
Yes.
But I realize now that I could have been just a little bit more, push the orchestra up a bit. But it's always safe to stay on the soft side.
Right. I noticed you start the third movement with these sonorous brass chords coming in, and then it thins out from there.
Thins out.
Yeah,
Right.
because if you'd kept those chords, you may not have heard the instruments as easily.
Right.
Yeah.
I also was surprised that the strings and the bassoon and clarinet together molded so well. At the end of the first movement,
Oh,
I have
yes.
the strings fan out into this very, very big chord as the clarinet and bassoon trail
Way
off.
through. Right.
Right, and I liked to have all the overtones and everything kind
Yes.
of mixed together with the bassoon and the clarinet right in the middle of that. That was a lot of fun. Another orchestral surprise was my gaggle of bassoons. In the second movement, on the return of the A theme, I decided I took cue from Bartók and Concerto for Orchestra
yeah.
in the second movement. Because right there, there's a trio for bassoons. And I always found that so cool. It's so, I mean, he does it masterfully. I said, oh, let me take a shot. How many times in my life do I have like 3 bassoons and a
Yes.
contra at my disposal? So in the piano version, I make Ewell work very hard to get all the voicing. And it's tricky. But in the orchestral version, it's kind of, that's a fun spot with the bassoons kind of just all.
It's a wonderful moment. I remember it well.
And one other color in the third movement that I point out is I love the times when the clarinet, where you and John, the clarinet and the bassoon, are trading off real fast. And what surprised me in the orchestra is how the pizzicatos would really give such sharp attack to and punctuate. Sometimes pizzicato, sometimes brass would punctuate those
accents.
exchanges.
Yeah.
And that was really cool because and when I was writing it, I was thinking of something. I heard the strings and I heard them give a point there, but I didn't realize in real life how much it helped to have that attack from the strings with the combined sharp attack from the bassoon and the clarinet.
Yeah. Now, you wrote two very challenging parts for the bassoon and the clarinet, but I understand a youth orchestra has actually played the orchestral part.
Yes.
So it is quite approachable as a piece.
Yes,
And we hope it will be played many, many more times for that reason.
and I'm so appreciative to you and Ava and John for giving this world premiere. It's so exciting that during COVID,
Yes.
you've made a premiere that's now going to be able to be seen
Yes.
on demand,
Yes.
anytime, anywhere.
Well, we just appreciate this chamber version. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Yeah.